Professor Long, thank you so much for joining us on the Daily Oz.
Thank you, Zara, for having me here.
I want to start with a bit about your work. Can you just tell me a bit about the work you've done in the area of melanoma cancer specifically?
I'm a medical oncologist, so I treat cancer with drug therapy. If you think of your immune system is responsible for keeping the nasties away. You don't want your immune system to attack your own tissue, your good tissue, your organs, but you want it to attack all the nasties like viruses and bacteria and keep you healthy. So we try to get a person's own immune system to kill the melanoma cancer cells. The drugs we use activate the immune system in a very specific way to kill cancer cells. So melanoma cancer was the first cancer to actually show that the modern immunotherapies work, and I was part of that development of those drugs.
I am part of a generation that heard slip, slop, slap. We heard that tanning kills. Why do you think that we are still having this conversation now? Why do you think that messaging hasn't cut through yet?
Tanning's a massive problem. I think we have not educated our population well enough about the risks of the sun. We've also got to remember that the great campaign of the 80s, Slip, Slop, Slap, only really went for a decade, and that has not been rejuvenated or done again in a modern way. So we now have a whole bunch of teenagers and 20-year-olds and even early 30-year-olds who did not learn about how dangerous sun can be. Yeah, they had no hat, no play, but actually understanding the damage that UV or the sun can do and the risks is really not at the level it needs to be.
I wonder how much it comes up against these beauty standards that we have definitely perpetuated on social media, but there is this standard that we think that tan skin is something beautiful, something desirable. How does any marketing slogan come up against that sort of standard?
It's a big mountain, but it can be done by using the very tool that created it. So we've got to use social media and we've got to just set a new standard. A great example is fashion. I'm old enough now to have seen jeans up high under the breast, low down, almost at the pubic line.
I'm wearing loose jeans 5 years ago. That would not have been a thing.
Exactly. All of these things are fashion and changeable. And that's what we can do with tanning. We did it with smoking. We do it with seatbelts in this country. We can do this.
We're speaking here about social media. You are now speaking to 500,000 young people. What is your message to the people watching this on the Daily Oz?
Tanning represents your skin cells in trauma. The fact the skin is going darker means your skin is putting up a defense.
When the skin is getting darker, scientifically, what is happening?
So in the layers of our skin, we have these cells called melanocytes. When the sun or UV hits our skin, those melanocytes are triggered to produce a pigment called melanin. That production of melanin is your skin saying, I'm under trauma, I need an armor. The mistake that we make is that when your skin's making that armor, which is going a bit darker, is that's healthy and then will protect us further, but it does not protect you from skin cancer. The fairer your skin is, the higher the risk, but I have a lot of brown-eyed, brown-haired people who think they have olive skin in my clinic.
And it's not just older people who you're seeing, right? I believe that this is something that is also disproportionately affecting young people.
Every 30 minutes, an Australian is diagnosed with a melanoma. Every 6 hours, somebody dies of melanoma. It used to be every 4 to 5 hours. We've changed that to every 6 hours by the drug therapies I mentioned before. Young people disproportionately are impacted by melanoma. In Australia, 20 to 39-year-olds, guess what the most common cancer is? Melanoma.
You have set a very lofty ambition to bring down those deaths to zero. How do you go about doing that?
We strategize on this with our faculty and we have a full big picture view of melanoma. We think of the full life cycle. And you can do this for any cancer actually. So number one, what causes melanoma? That's prevention.
Yeah.
What can we do in that space? You and I have just spoken about glamorization of tanning. Melanoma Institute Australia researchers proved that sunbeds cause melanoma. It was that research that got commercial sunbeds banned in this country.
We've been speaking there about melanoma, but you were jointly awarded the Australian of the Year title with your colleague, and my understanding is also a very close friend, Professor Richard Scolyer. And you've been using the work that you've done in the melanoma field to actually treat Richard, who was diagnosed with incurable brain cancer. Can you just talk me through what your work in that field has looked like to date?
You can imagine if you're being told you possibly have a brain cancer and you're a doctor and you know all about it and you've looked at brain specimens many, many, many times throughout your whole career, as Richard has, and you just know that this is going to be a bad one. You can imagine that you're just in a state of shock at that point. And your colleagues and friends like me, I was just grief-stricken, literally howling with that physical pain. You can't describe it until you've been through it. So we were speaking before about immunotherapy, using your immune system to kill cancer cells. When I get presented with someone with a bad melanoma that's spread everywhere, and I know when looking at the tissue, Richard will look at the tissue and then we'll analyse the tissue with our lab, all the features that tell us this is going to be a bad one and it's going to be hard to get the immune system to recognise it and kill it. What do I do then? What are the trials I've done? And I just applied those principles to Richard's tumour. It was scary what I was suggesting. I had a lot of experience with melanoma. Richard and I together with our colleagues had pioneered using immunotherapy first before you remove a melanoma surgically. And we'd shown that when you do that, you actually train your immune system better. All of a sudden, we were seeing these incredible cures and we were training the immune system better by giving the immune therapy first and then cutting out. So that's where we've really pioneered the treatment and the paradigm. It really shifts the paradigm. So I applied that to Richard's tumour.
What did that conversation look like?
I mean, we cried together. So through tears, it's like, why don't we try this? Why don't we try this treatment? And Richard, I'm going to try and pick the drugs I think that are going to be the best for this tumour. I'm going to treat it like the worst of the worst melanoma. And that's what I did. We don't know yet how this will go long term for Richard. He's fine now, but the odds are against him. The type Richard has, his survival is approximately 14 months with the current standard treatment, and that treatment has not changed since 2005.
Wow.
So when two cancer researchers are presented with that, and you've just made all these changes in melanoma, you can't but help think, can't we try something different? And that's why we came up with going with drug first, immunotherapy, delay the surgery. And as Richard said, people might focus on my survival, but it's that data that's incredible. This is a foundation.
Yeah.
Even if Richard doesn't survive, this is a founding thing to build upon. You're not going to make a light bulb by refining a candle. Don't keep doing what you did before. You need to think completely differently, because even if these people don't survive, we learn for the next bunch of people, and Australians love to make a difference.
I think that's a beautiful note to end on. Thank you so much for your time, Professor Long.
Thank you, Zara.